Stand on the banks of the River Dee in the Scottish Highlands, and you will see it. A granite palace rising from the mist, turrets like fingers reaching toward dark clouds. Balmoral Castle. Beautiful. Yes, but this house was never just a beautiful villa. Here, a widowed queen retreated into a 40-year mourning that became a national scandal. Here, a Highland servant gained such power over the monarch that he was called her secret husband. Here, the longest reigning British monarch in history chose to spend her final days and her final breath. How did one fortress become the sanctuary for Britain's most powerful women and the prison of their grief? If you enjoy deep explorations into the forgotten mansions and families that shaped the most extravagant era, please support this documentary by liking and subscribing. And if you have your own insights or stories about these estates, I'd love to read them. Now, let's step inside. September 28, 1853. The Dee Valley holds morning cold like a secret. Frost whitens the grass. The air tastes of peat smoke and pine. Queen Victoria, 34 years old, stands before a pile of granite blocks. She wears black mourning for her recently deceased friend, the Duchess of Kent. Around her neck, a heavy gold chain. In her hand, a silver trowel. Behind her, Prince Albert, 42 years old, husband, consort, the man who found this place. They are about to lay the foundation stone for a new castle. Not the first Balmoral. That one, a 16th century tower house bought from the Farquharson family just the year before for £32,000, roughly $4.4 million today, stands 100 yards southeast. Too small. 9 children and a growing household cannot fit into medieval walls. Albert has commissioned William Smith, Aberdeen's city architect, to design something grander, something that looks like Scotland itself had risen from stone. Scottish baronial-style turrets, crow-stepped gables, towers that pierce the sky. Albert personally amended the plans, added turrets, changed windows. This castle, Victoria will later write, is his own creation. The foundation stone descends. Inside, a bottle containing parchment signed by the royal family. Coins from the realm. A time capsule for whoever finds it centuries from now. But what they don't bury is the question no one asks. What will this place cost? Not in pounds sterling, not in construction budgets, but in grief, in scandal, in the slow erosion of a woman's identity until she becomes known not as Victoria Regina, but as Mrs. Brown. Stand here in 1853 and you see hope, a family building their Highland paradise. Stand here in 2025 and you see something else. Balmoral Castle has witnessed more royal deaths than any residence in British history. More mourning, more final breaths. The castle they are building will become a magnet for endings. Rewind to 1842. Queen Victoria, 23 years old, makes her first visit to Scotland. She is 5 years into her reign. 2 years married to Albert of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, a German prince who has never stopped missing the mountains of his homeland. The Highlands remind Albert of Germany, the mountains, the forests, the clean air far from London's coal smoke and political intrigue. He sees in Scotland what he has lost. He sees a place where his growing family might breathe. In 1848, they lease Balmoral from the trustees of Sir Robert Gordon, who had died suddenly at his breakfast table. The castle is small, modest, but the location is perfect 9 miles west of Ballater, 50 miles from Aberdeen, on the banks of the Dee and Royal Deeside. Victoria falls instantly in love. She calls it my dear paradise in the Highlands. The solitude, the privacy. At Balmoral, they can pretend to be ordinary. Walks without crowds. Dinners without ceremony. Their children climbing rocks, picking berries, learning to fish in cold streams. In 1852, Albert purchases the estate outright for £32,000. He also buys the neighboring Birkhall estate. He secures the lease on Abergeldy Castle. He is building an empire of solitude. But the existing castle is too small. By 1853, Victoria and Albert have 9 children. They need space for family, for staff, for visiting dignitaries who cannot be turned away even in paradise. Albert works with William Smith to design the new Balmoral. Local white granite quarried at Invergilder on the estate itself. Precision cut using modern machinery that produces a smooth finish unusual for the time. The castle will have 2 main blocks arranged around courtyards. Southwest block, main living quarters. Northeast block, servants' quarters and utility rooms. A 24-meter clock tower with turrets. Crow-stepped gables, battlemented porte-cochere. The projected cost, £80,000 to £100,000. Approximately $11 to $14 million today, equivalent to roughly $350 to $440 million in modern value. Construction begins in September 1853. The work takes 3 years. Built entirely by hand. Every block cut and placed by men whose names we do not know. Masons from Aberdeenshire, carpenters from Edinburgh, laborers from the surrounding farms and villages. By autumn 1855, the royal apartments are ready for occupancy, though the tower is still under construction and servants must lodge in the old house. By 1856, the new castle is complete. The old castle is demolished. A stone on the front lawn now marks where its entrance once stood. Albert immediately begins landscaping. He creates a model in sand to guide the improvements. New houses, stables, workshops, schools, a model dairy along the lines of the one at Windsor. He plants forests. He builds bridges, including one across the Dee, designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, completed in 1857. By 1859, the main works are finished. Around 100 buildings now surround the castle. A self-contained world. A working estate with grouse moors, forestry, farmland. Managed herds of deer, highland cattle, ponies. Albert is building permanence, security, a place where his family can return year after year. A place that will outlive him. He has no idea how soon that will be tested. Step past the showpiece rooms and the other face appears. Behind the beauty lies infrastructure. Balmoral is not just a castle. It is a machine. A self-sustaining organism that requires constant feeding. Descend into the basement spaces Queen Victoria never photographed for her published journals. Here, systems hum that most visitors never see. The castle generates its own power through a dedicated power plant. Water flows from a man-made reservoir engineered to supply the entire estate. Heating requires boiler rooms the size of small factories. Burning coal brought in by the ton from Aberdeen docks. The coal arrives weekly. Someone must unload it, cart it, shovel it into furnaces that never stop burning when the royal family is in residence. Industrial-scale kitchens occupy the ground floor of the northeast block. Ovens large enough to roast entire deer. Refrigeration rooms that run on ice blocks harvested from winter locks. Pantries stocked like a village shop floor by the hundredweight. Sugar in barrels, preserved fruits in rows of sealed jars. Someone must inventory all of it. Record every potato, every onion, every tin of imported tea. The staff quarters occupy the entire northeast block. Narrow staircases wind upward, unadorned and utilitarian. Service corridors allow maids and footmen to move unseen parallel hallways, running behind the grand ones, so that servants can disappear into walls when aristocrats approach. Laundry facilities process linens for 52 bedrooms. Imagine the volume. Sheets changed twice weekly. Tablecloths after every meal. Towels, undergarments, livery uniforms that must remain spotless. The laundresses work in steam-filled rooms, hands red and raw from lye soap. This parallel world was designed to remain out of sight. The fantasy of aristocratic leisure requires an invisible city of labor. Who are they? The people who make Balmoral run. Their names survive in payroll ledgers kept at the National Records of Scotland. Valuation rolls from 1895 list inhabitants and occupiers. We can reconstruct them. John Brown, born 1826, Gilly, and later Queen's Highland servant. His brothers also serve. Archibald Archie Brown becomes valet to Prince Leopold. William Brown works as a farmer on estate land. Abdul Karim, the Munshi, born 1862 in India. Listed as inhabitant occupier of the Secretary S House at Balmoral in 1895. Victoria, as Indian attendant who teaches her Hindustani and faces racism from the household staff. Robert Beaton Ritchie, born 1894, woodsman at Burkall. Enlisted in the Gordon Highlanders in 1915. Killed at Arras in 1917. Never recovered. His name carved into Crathie War Memorial. And dozens more whose names vanish into payroll columns. Gillies who wake at dawn to prepare for shooting parties. Maids perhaps Mary or Agnes or Catherine, who scrub floors on hands and knees before sunrise so Victoria never sees dirt. Footmen who stand during 8-course dinners, backs aching, faces neutral, serving food they will never taste. Cooks whose hands bear burned scars from cast iron ranges. Gardeners who plant 10,000 bulbs each autumn, knowing they will never own a garden. Stable hands who muck out stalls, brush horses, polish tack until leather gleams. The royal family employs around 50 full-time staff at Balmoral. During summer months when the family is in residence, that number swells to 100 or more part-time workers locals from Crathie, Ballater, Raymer. Farmers' daughters who need extra income. Shepherds' sons who work between harvests. These are not volunteers. They are paid. But how much? Records from the 1890s show that a gillie earned roughly £50 to £60 per year. Break the math down further. A gillie earns £60 per year. That is £5 per month. Roughly £1 and 25 pence per week. 25 shillings. For leading ponies through highland trails. For loading shotguns in freezing rain. For carrying dead stags down mountainsides. For standing in rivers up to your waist, teaching princes to fish. A housemaid earns £25 per year. That is roughly £2 per month, 10 shillings per week, for scrubbing chamber pots, for changing soiled linens, for laying fires at 5 a.m., for disappearing into walls when royalty approaches. Meanwhile, Victoria's personal expenditures at Balmoral include importing Spanish tiles, commissioning statues, building entire cottages for favored servants, landscaping acres of formal gardens, purchasing neighboring estates, expanding, always expanding. The estate itself requires constant maintenance. The castle alone has 52 bedrooms, 65 fireplaces, a banquet hall, a library holding approximately 18,000 books, drawing rooms, dining rooms, countless corridors, endless surfaces that require dusting, miles of lead plumbing that freezes in winter and bursts. Hundreds of windows each one must be washed inside and out. When something breaks, and something always breaks, it must be fixed immediately. You cannot tell the Queen of England that her toilet does not flush. Granite may be strong, but Highland weather is relentless. Wind off the North Sea, rain that falls sideways, snow that drifts to second-story windows, frost that cracks stone foundations, damp that creeps into mortar and rots wood from the inside. The castle requires a permanent team of masons, carpenters, and roofers just to keep it standing. And then there are the improvements. Albert never stops building. Between 1856 and his death in 1861, he adds, cottages for senior staff stone buildings with slate roofs, chimneys, glazed windows. Better than tenant farmers live in, but still, cottages. Karim Cottage, built for Abdul Karim in the 1890s, a mark of Victoria's favor. A source of resentment among white servants who who cannot fathom why an Indian Muslim attendant receives his own residence. Bailey na Coil, built for John Brown. Wood Town in Gaelic, a cottage where Brown could retreat when not attending Victoria, his sanctuary, his home. After his death, Victoria keeps it exactly as he left it, a shrine to a servant, garden cottage for the royal children, a playhouse, essentially, a place where princes and princesses can pretend to be ordinary children with ordinary homes. Glas Alt Shiel, a remote lodge beside Loch Muig, built in 1868, 7 years after Albert's death. Victoria's escape from Balmoral itself. When even the castle feels too public, too crowded, too full of people, she retreats here. A lodge so isolated that contemporary accounts describe it as at the ends of the earth. Every structure requires workers. Builders who cut stone and mix mortar. Plumbers who install pipes and pumps. Electricians as technology advances, who wire rooms for electric lights. Painters who apply coat after coat of whitewash. Roofers who replace slates blown off by winter gales. The estate becomes its own economy. A village within a valley, self-sufficient, self-contained. But here is where the story darkens. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in the slow accumulation of details that reveal structural inequity. The workers at Balmoral are not enslaved. They are not prisoners. They choose to work here. But choice, in the Highlands of the 1850s, is a complicated word. This is the era following the Highland clearances, the forced displacement of Highland Scots from their ancestral lands to make room for sheep farming and aristocratic hunting estates. Between 1750 and 1850, tens of thousands of families were evicted, burned out of cottages their ancestors had occupied for centuries, forced onto ships bound for Canada, Australia, America. Those who remain often have few options beyond service to the landed gentry or emigration. When Victoria and Albert purchased Balmoral in 1852, they are participating in a system. They are not villains. They do not personally evict tenants. They pay wages. They treat their staff better than many aristocrats of the era. Victoria writes fondly of her servants in her journals. She learns Gaelic phrases to speak with gillies. She commissions paintings of Highland gamekeepers. She attends Highland games at Braemar and applauds caber tossing. But the structure remains. A castle built on the labor of people who will never own land like this. Never sit in rooms like these except to clean them. Never dine at tables like these except to serve at them. Never be buried with monuments like the cairns Victoria erects for her own family cairns that memorialize marriages, births, anniversaries, visits, cairns for royalty, stones for aristocrats. Where are the cairns for Robert Beaton Ritchie, the woodsman who died at Arras? Where are the monuments for the gillies who carried Victoria's pony through freezing rivers? Where are the statues for the housemaids who emptied chamber pots for 40 years? They are in Crathy churchyard, modest headstones, weathered names, grass growing over graves that no tourists visit. The beauty is real. Victoria's journals describe Balmoral as paradise. The photographs show granite glowing in Highland light. The archives preserve menus from banquets, where venison and grouse and salmon were served on china plates with silver forks. The cost is real. Workers who earned in a year what Victoria spent in a week. Servants who spent their lives enabling leisure they would never experience. People who died in wars that interrupted shooting seasons. Both truths exist simultaneously. This is not hypocrisy. This is structure. This is the architecture of aristocracy. Beautiful at the top, functional in the middle, invisible at the bottom. Stand in Balmoral's ballroom, the only room open to the public until 2024, and you can admire paintings, silver, mint and china. Stand in the basement boiler room which you cannot visit, and you can imagine coal dust in lungs. Heat like a furnace, the taste of sulfur. Both are Balmoral. Both are true. By 1860, Balmoral is complete. not just the castle, but the world around it. The royal family spends late summer and autumn here every year, 4 months sometimes. A rhythm as regular as the seasons. They arrive in August, they depart in October. Victoria describes days of perfect happiness, long walks through the hills, picnics beside mountain streams, evenings by the fire while Albert reads aloud. The children, 9 of them, ranging from the Prince of Wales, born 1841, to Princess Beatrice, born 1857, exploring the woods, learning to fish, attending Highland games at nearby Braemar. Albert designs a Balmoral tartan, green and red and black. The family wears it, hang it, upholster furniture with it. The castle becomes a shrine to Scottish culture, or at least to the romanticized version wealthy. English people imagine Scottish culture to be. Victoria writes extensively about Balmoral in her journals. She publishes 2 books, Leaves from the Journal of Our Life in the Highlands, 1868, and More Leaves, 1884. The books are bestsellers. They spread the image of Balmoral as paradise. They influence a generation of British aristocrats to adopt Highland culture, to build baronial mansions, to wear kilts and sponsor Highland games. Historian Michael Lynch writes that the Scottishness of Balmoral helped to give the monarchy a truly British dimension for the first time. This is the height, the moment when everything works, when the dream Albert built seems sustainable. Christmas 1860. The family gathers at Windsor, but their hearts are in Scotland. They talk of returning next summer, of Albert's plans for a new dairy, of improvements to the gardens, of long walks and longer evenings. Victoria is 41 years old. Albert is 41. They have been married 20 years. They have 9 children. They have built an empire literal and metaphorical. They have created Balmoral as their sanctuary. How long can this last? Not long. December 14th, 1861. Windsor Castle. Around 10:45 p.m., Prince Albert dies of typhoid fever. He is 42 years old, 21 years of marriage, 9 children. A partnership that redefined the British monarchy. Gone in a fever that medicine cannot stop. Victoria, 42, plunges into mourning so deep it resembles madness. Contemporary physicians would call it a complete nervous breakdown. Modern psychiatrists might diagnose major depressive disorder, complicated grief, perhaps even elements of what we now call post-traumatic stress. She withdraws from public life entirely. She refuses to attend the state opening of Parliament, a constitutional duty. She will not appear in public for years. She dresses in black for the rest of her life, 40 years of unrelenting mourning dress. Not gray, not purple after a period of mourning. Black, always black. Widow's weeds. Crepe veils. She places photographs and mementos of Albert in every room of every residence. She keeps his clothes laid out in his dressing room, as if he might return any moment. She orders his shaving water brought each morning, hot water for a dead man. Staff must maintain the illusion that he lives. His desk remains exactly as he left it, papers untouched, pens in their holders. At Windsor, she closes off the blue room where Albert died. It becomes a shrine. No one may enter without her permission. She places fresh flowers there daily. She sits beside his empty bed and speaks to him. Historians describe it as a nervous breakdown that lasts 2 years at minimum. Some argue it lasts her entire life. She never fully recovers. She becomes the widow of Windsor. Absent, invisible, the public grows restless. Where is their queen? England needs its monarch visible, present, performing state functions. But Victoria does not care, or cannot care. Grief has swallowed her whole. She retreats to Balmoral. Not immediately at first. She cannot bear to go there. Every room reminds her of Albert. Every path they walked together. Every cairn they built. Balmoral is saturated with his presence. To go there feels like walking into his ghost. But by September 1863, she returns. And then she cannot leave. She extends her stays from the customary 6 weeks to 3 months, then 4 months, from August through December some years. She conducts state business from Scotland, forcing government ministers to make the long journey north 2 days by train, then carriage from Aberdeen to Balmoral. Lord Palmerston, the Prime Minister, resents it. Benjamin Disraeli, later Prime Minister, flatters her but privately complains. William Gladstone finds her impossible. The British press begins to criticize. Punch magazine publishes cartoons showing an empty throne. Where is the Queen? Why does she not show herself? Taxes pay for a monarchy. Citizens deserve to see their monarch. But Victoria does not care. She insists she is working. She reviews state papers, approves legislation, meets with ministers. That should be sufficient. But it is not. Monarchy requires visibility, performance, spectacle. Victoria offers none of these. She becomes a rumor, a shadow, a name without a face. At Balmoral, she commissions monuments to Albert. Cairn stone pyramids built by local masons, scattered across the estate like giant grave markers. Each one memorializes something. The Prince Consort's cairn, the largest, erected in 1862 on Craig Lorrigan, inscribed with Albert's virtues, visible for miles. The Princess Royal's cairn, commemorating the marriage of Victoria's eldest daughter. The Princess Alice's cairn, for another daughter. More follow over the years. Cairns for weddings. Cairns for visits. Cairns for anniversaries. Victoria cannot stop building monuments. Each one says, "He was here. We were happy. This was real." She builds more cottages. She expands the gardens according to Albert's plans. Continuing his work means he is not truly gone. She finishes the model dairy he designed. She plants trees. She reshapes the landscape into a permanent memorial. And then, in 1864, a daughter makes a suggestion. Princess Alice notes that Victoria has always been happy at Balmoral when riding in her pony cart. The simple pleasure of movement, of highland air, of being outdoors. Why not bring the Balmoral gillie who leads her pony to Windsor and Osborne? Perhaps familiar comfort will help her emerge from this darkness. The gillie's name is John Brown, born December 8, 1826, in Crathinard, near Balmoral. Second of 11 children born to John Brown, a tenant farmer, and Margaret Lays. Started work at 14 as a stable boy on Sir Robert Gordon's Balmoral estate. When Victoria and Albert leased Balmoral in 1848, Brown was already employed there, a local boy who knew every trail, every river crossing, every gamekeeper's path. Victoria first mentions him in her journal on September 11, 1849. Brown leads her pony during Highland excursions. By 1851, at Albert's explicit suggestion, Brown becomes the permanent leader of the Queen's pony. In 1858, he becomes Albert's personal gillie, his shooting guide, gun loader, companion on deer-stalking expeditions. Brown is direct, blunt. He does not coddle aristocrats. He tells Prince Albert when he is shooting poorly. He scolds the Prince of Wales for being late. He treats nobility like human beings, not like porcelain figurines that might shatter. Albert appreciates this. He likes Brown's honesty, his competence, his absolute lack of pretense. After Albert dies, Brown remains at Balmoral, still leading ponies, still working the estate. But Victoria, in her grief, barely notices him. Until December 1864, when Princess Alice's suggestion is implemented. John Brown travels south to Windsor and Osborne House. His role, to encourage the Queen to ride out, to get her moving, to break the pattern of stasis that has settled over her like frost. What happens next will scandalize a nation and haunt the monarchy for 20 years. Brown does not treat Victoria like a queen. He treats her like a woman who needs to get out of bed. He is blunt, direct. He does not ask permission. He tells her, "Good morning, woman. Time to ride." Not "Your Majesty." Not "Mom," pronounced "marm" in the proper aristocratic way. Woman, Scottish dialect, familiar, almost rude. Victoria, who has been surrounded by sycophants and courtiers who tiptoe around her grief, who speak in hushed voices and avoid her eyes, responds to Brown's directness like a plant responds to sun. She rides out. She begins to function again. She attends to state business. She stops spending entire days in bed. Victoria makes Brown's position permanent. She creates a new role for him, the Queen's Highland servant, a title that sounds official but is actually unprecedented. Brown is not part of the household hierarchy. He reports to no one but Victoria. He has authority no servant has ever had. Brown's power grows. He arranges Victoria's schedule. He decides when she will ride, when she will take air, when she will rest. He accompanies her everywhere, to Windsor, to Osborne, to Balmoral. He stands behind her chair at meals. He sleeps in the room next to hers. The Foreign Secretary, the Earl of Derby, writes in his journal, long solitary rides in secluded parts of the park, constant attendance upon her in her room, private messages sent by him to persons of rank, avoidance of observation while he is leading her pony or driving her little carriage. Derby notes that Brown and Victoria sleep in adjoining rooms, contrary to etiquette and even decency. The court resents Brown. The household staff resents him. He has no sense of hierarchy. He gives orders to aristocrats. He scolds the Prince of Wales, the future King of England, as if Edward were a careless stable boy. When Edward protests, Brown tells him to mind himself. The future King of England, scolded by a Highland servant. Brown drinks. Everyone knows it. He is Scottish. He drinks whiskey, sometimes to excess. Victoria knows. She calls his drunkenness bashfulness. She makes excuses. She defends him against all criticism. By 1866, gossip explodes into scandal. Punch magazine, known for satirical cartoons, publishes images of Victoria and Brown in compromising situations, nothing explicit, but suggestive enough. Swiss newspapers report that Victoria has secretly married Brown. The name, Mrs. Brown, enters public discourse. Did they marry? No legal record exists, but some sources claim Reverend Norman MacLeod, Victoria's chaplain, performed a secret ceremony in 1872. Brown wears a gold ring on his left hand, the heart side, the marriage side. Victoria wears a ring Brown gave her, his mother's wedding ring. Did they sleep together? Biographies diverge. Victorian-era sources insist the relationship was platonic. Biographer A.N. Wilson claims they slept in the same bed but never consummated the relationship. Others suggest Victoria saw Brown as a spiritual medium who could contact Albert's ghost, that she used Brown to conduct seances in which she spoke with her dead husband. What is certain? Victoria gives Brown 2 medals she personally commissions: the Faithful Servant Medal, silver, and the Devoted Service Medal, gold. No other servant in British royal history receives custom-designed medals. Victoria doubles Brown's salary. She gives him a house at Balmoral for his retirement. She has the estate manager trace Brown's family tree to prominent Scottish clans. When Victoria publishes more leaves from the Journal of Our Life in the Highlands in 1884, she dedicates it to "my devoted personal attendant and faithful friend John Brown." The dedication scandalizes polite society. Queens do not dedicate books to servants. Victoria has a cast made of Brown's hand shortly after his death, just as she had a cast made of Albert's hand. The 2 men, the 2 great loves, or whatever they were, immortalized in plaster. Brown dies unexpectedly on March 27, 1883, at Windsor Castle. He is 56 years old. He contracts a severe chill erysipelas, a bacterial skin infection, and refuses to rest. His devotion to duty literally kills him. Victoria is devastated. She writes in her journal that Brown's death is as painful as Albert's death. She commissions sculptor Edgar Boehm to create a life-sized bronze statue of Brown. She has it placed at Balmoral. The inscription reads, "Friend more than servant, loyal, truthful, brave, selfless than duty, even to the grave." She writes a monograph about Brown, intending to publish it. Her private secretary, Sir Henry Ponsonby, is alarmed. The Dean of Windsor, Dr. Randall Davidson, threatens to resign as court chaplain if she publishes. They convince her the monarchy cannot survive such a scandal. Victoria abandons publication. Ponsonby gets hold of Brown's private diaries and burns them. History loses whatever truth they contained. When Victoria dies on January 22, 1901, at Osborne House, age 81, she leaves strict burial instructions. Her ladies-in-waiting and physician carry them out in secret. She is to be buried wearing John Brown's mother's wedding ring. She has worn it constantly since his death. A photograph of Brown is to be placed in her left hand. A lock of Brown's hair is to be placed in her coffin. Letters from Brown, the contents of which no one else reads, are to be placed in her hand. A pocket handkerchief belonging to Brown is to be placed not near but on her. Also in the coffin, Albert's dressing gown, a plaster cast of Albert's hand, Albert's wedding ring, the two men, the prince consort who gave her status, the Highland servant who gave her comfort, both immortalized in her death. Her son, the new King Edward VII, 59 years old, is furious. Edward VII ascends the throne at age 59 after waiting longer than any heir in British history. He has watched his mother withdraw into grief. He has watched her elevate a Highland servant above her own children. He has been humiliated by Brown's sharp tongue and informal manner for nearly 20 years. Now he has power. Edward orders the destruction of every monument Victoria created for John Brown. Statues, busts, photographs, private memorials, all destroyed. The life-sized bronze statue at Balmoral is too large to destroy easily, so Edward has it moved to a remote corner of the estate where visitors are unlikely to find it. It remains there today, hidden in the woods. Edward instructs Victoria's youngest daughter, Princess Beatrice, to transcribe Victoria's diaries for publication. Beatrice edits heavily. She removes references to Brown. She softens Victoria's language. She burns the original journals after transcribing them. The official history of Victoria's reign is sanitized. Brown becomes a footnote, a servant, nothing more. But Edward cannot erase everything. The ring is buried with Victoria. The photograph is in her hand. Brown's memory survives in the graves and monuments of Crathy churchyard, where he is buried. In the locked archives where payroll ledgers list his name. In the whispers of families whose grandparents remember. Edward himself does not much care for Balmoral. He visits for only 3 to 4 weeks per year. He prefers Sandringham, his estate in Norfolk. When he dies in 1910, Balmoral passes to his son, George V. George V loves Balmoral as Victoria did. He makes substantial improvements during the 1910s and 1920s. Formal gardens to the south of the castle, new staff buildings, updated infrastructure, but World War I interrupts. Royal visits cease. The estate operates on reduced staff. Young men from the surrounding farms and villages enlist. Some never return. Robert Beaton Ritchie, born 1894, worked as a woodsman at Birkhall, near Balmoral. He enlisted in the Gordon Highlanders in March 1915. Killed at the Battle of Arras, May 29, 1917. His body was never recovered. His name appears on the Crathy War Memorial. The war changes everything. The old world, the one where aristocrats could maintain 50,000-acre estates with 100 servants, is dying. Death duties rise. Inheritance taxes bite. The economics of grand estates become unsustainable. But Balmoral survives. Why? Because Balmoral is private property. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, which belonged to the crown, Balmoral was purchased by Albert personally. It passes through inheritance, not through state succession. When Edward VIII abdicates in 1936, he retains ownership of Balmoral and Sandringham. His brother George VI must explicitly purchase both estates from Edward in a negotiated settlement. This keeps them in the family, private, exempt from the financial scrutiny that applies to crown properties. Elizabeth II inherits Balmoral from her father in 1952. She continues the tradition of annual summer visits, 4 months, August to October. Every year without fail, the estate remains a working operation. Grouse moors, forestry, farmland, managed herds. The royal family employs around 50 full-time and 50 to 100 part-time staff. The castle itself is valued at roughly £160 million, approximately $200 million USD, today, not including the land. Balmoral becomes Elizabeth's favorite residence. More than Buckingham Palace, more than Windsor. At Balmoral, she can walk without crowds, drive her Land Rover, ride horses, picnic with family, wash dishes after meals, do normal things. It is also where she learns of the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, August 30th to 31st, 1997. Balmoral. The royal family is in residence for their annual summer holiday. Elizabeth II, now 71, is here with Prince Philip, 76, Prince Charles, 48, newly divorced, and their grandsons William, 15, and Harry, 12. Diana, Princess of Wales, divorced from Charles since August 1996, is in Paris. She is with Dodi Fayed, son of Egyptian billionaire Mohammed Al Fayed. They are staying at the Ritz Hotel. They are being chased by paparazzi. At Balmoral, the family follows their usual routine. Morning walks, fishing in the Dee, shooting parties, though William and Harry are still learning, formal dinners, card games in the evenings. The rhythm that has governed this place for 145 years. Diana knows Balmoral well. She spent summers here during her marriage to Charles. She honeymooned here in 1981, shortly after their July wedding at St. Paul's Cathedral. Photographs from that time show her at Craigowon Lodge, 7-bedroom stone house, approximately 1 mile from the main castle. She and Charles posed for photos there, young and smiling, the future bright. But Diana never loved Balmoral. She found it cold, formal despite the informality. The shooting culture disturbed her. She disliked blood sports. The long Highland walks exhausted her. The evening rituals, charades, card games, conversations about estate management bored her. She felt isolated there, trapped. The vastness that Elizabeth finds freeing, Diana found imprisoning. After the divorce, Diana does not visit Balmoral. She is not invited. The arrangement is clear. The boys will spend time with their father. Diana will see them before and after. August 30th, 1997. Late evening Paris time. Around 12:20 a.m. on August 31st, Diana and Dodi leave the Ritz. They are being pursued by paparazzi on motorcycles. Their driver, Henry Paul, enters the Pont de l'Alma tunnel at high speed. The Mercedes crashes into a pillar. Dodi dies at the scene. Diana is severely injured, chest injuries, internal bleeding. She is taken to Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital. Doctors operate. At 4 a.m. Paris time, Diana dies. She is 36 years old. At Balmoral, it is 3 a.m. British summer time. The castle is dark, silent. The royal family is sleeping. Prince Charles receives the news first, a phone call from the British ambassador to France. He wakes. He processes what cannot be processed. He must tell his sons. Charles goes to Harry's bedroom. Harry is 12 years old, asleep in a Highland castle, dreaming of whatever 12-year-olds dream. Charles sits beside the bed. He wakes Harry gently. In Harry's memoir Spare, published in 2023, he describes this moment. His father sits beside him, delivers the news simply. Mummy has been in a car accident. She did not survive. They tried to save her, but they could not. Everything will be all right, Charles says. The words hang in Highland air. Cold, inadequate. The kind of thing you say when there is nothing adequate to say. William learns separately. He is 15, old enough to understand immediately that nothing will be all right. His mother is dead. The press will go insane. The public will demand spectacle. His private grief will become public property. Elizabeth makes a decision. The family will stay at Balmoral. This decision will be criticized more harshly than almost any decision Elizabeth makes in 70 years as queen. Why does she keep the family at Balmoral? The official reason: the boys need privacy, time to process, space to grieve away from cameras. Balmoral offers 50,000 acres of isolation. At Balmoral, William and Harry can walk without being photographed. They can cry without being seen. They can be children, not princes. The unofficial reason, the one critics suggest: Elizabeth does not understand the public mood. She does not grasp that Diana was beloved, that the public is grieving. That absence will be interpreted as coldness, as indifference, as evidence that the royal family never loved Diana and does not mourn her. For 5 days, Elizabeth stays at Balmoral with William and Harry. The press explodes. Where is the Queen? The Daily Mail runs headlines in capital letters. The Sun publishes photographs of Buckingham Palace with no flag at half-mast. The royal standard never flies at half-mast. This is protocol. But the public does not care about protocol. Television news runs continuous coverage demanding royal visibility. Prime Minister Tony Blair appears on television. He calls Diana the people's princess. The phrase becomes permanent. The public adopts it. Diana was theirs. The people's, not the royals. And where is the royal family? In Scotland, hiding. That is how the press frames it. At Balmoral, William and Harry walk the hills. They fish in the Dee. Charles takes them on walks. Philip accompanies them gruff, direct, military in his approach to grief. Get outdoors. Keep moving. Do not sit still. Elizabeth keeps them on schedule. Morning walks, afternoon activities, evening dinners, routines, structure. This is how the royal family deals with crisis. Maintain normalcy. Is this the right approach? Psychologically, perhaps. Trauma therapists recommend structure for grieving children. Familiar routines provide safety. Balmoral offers the boys a cocoon place where they are protected from public spectacle. But politically, catastrophic. The British public feels abandoned. Their princess is dead. Where is their queen? Why has she not spoken? Why has she not returned to London? Editorials question the monarchy's future. If the queen cannot show basic human compassion, what is the point of a monarchy? Perhaps the institution has outlived its usefulness. Perhaps Charles should abdicate. Perhaps William should become king immediately. The monarchy is in genuine crisis. Finally, on Friday, September 5th, 5 days after Diana's death, Elizabeth relents. The family returns to London. Elizabeth delivers a televised address from Buckingham Palace. She acknowledges Diana's death. She praises Diana's charity work. She says, "I share in your determination to cherish her memory." It is the first time Elizabeth has ever addressed the nation about a personal loss. Diana's funeral takes place on September 6, 1997, at Westminster Abbey. 2 billion people watch worldwide. William and Harry walk behind the coffin. William is 15. Harry is 12. They walk through London streets lined with sobbing crowds. Strangers weeping for their mother. That image, 2 boys walking behind their mothers. Coffin becomes one of the defining images of the late 20th century. Afterward, historians debate Elizabeth's decision. Was she right to keep the boys at Balmoral? Prince Harry, in spare, offers his perspective. The remoteness helped. Being far from London, far from the hysteria, gave him space to process. But it also felt surreal, like being in a different world while the actual world was falling apart. He describes walking the hills, fishing, trying to understand what death means when your mother was alive yesterday and is not alive today. Balmoral offered silence. But silence, Harry writes, is not always helpful. Years later, looking back, what does Balmoral mean in this story? It means the same thing it has always meant: sanctuary, distance, privacy. But it also means disconnection, isolation, the belief that you can retreat far enough into the Highlands that London's problems cannot reach you. Elizabeth believed Balmoral would protect her grandsons. And perhaps it did. Perhaps William and Harry needed those 5 days away from cameras. Perhaps they needed to walk in mountains, breathe Highland air, be children for a few more days before becoming public mourners. Or perhaps Elizabeth made a mistake. Perhaps she misjudged the public mood. Perhaps she prioritized family over monarchy. Perhaps she forgot that queens do not have the luxury of private grief. Both can be true. Both probably are true. Balmoral offered what it always offers: a place to hide, a place to breathe, a place to pretend, however briefly, that you are not royal, not public property, not a symbol, just a grandmother with 2 grieving boys, just a woman who has lost someone, just a family trying to survive something unsurvivable, but the cost? Public fury, weeks of negative press, a crisis that threatened the monarchy's survival. The castle cannot protect you from everything. Sometimes stone walls are not enough. July 2022. Elizabeth II, now 96, arrives at Balmoral for her annual summer holiday. She has been queen for 70 years, the longest reign in British history. She is tired. Her health is declining. She knows. On September 6, 2022, Elizabeth receives Liz Truss, the newly elected Prime Minister, at Balmoral. Tradition dictates this meeting should take place at Buckingham Palace. But Elizabeth's mobility issues make travel difficult. The meeting happens at Balmoral. Photographs capture the moment. Elizabeth smiles. She shakes Truss's hand. She wears a gray cardigan and blue skirt. Her hands show bruising. Edward Young, her private secretary, privately informs Truss after the meeting. The Queen may not live much longer. He later reveals that Elizabeth knew she was dying throughout that summer. On September 7th, Elizabeth is scheduled to attend a virtual Privy Council meeting. At 6 p.m., attendees are told the meeting is cancelled. Doctors have advised her to rest. September 8, 2022. Morning. Prince Charles is at Dumfries House in Ayrshire. At 7 a.m., a helicopter flies into Balmoral. Camilla joins him from nearby Birkhall. Princess Anne, already staying with her mother, is at the castle. Throughout the day, other family members travel to Scotland. Prince William, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, Sophie, Countess of Wessex. They depart RAF Northolt on a flight to Aberdeen Airport. They arrive at Balmoral shortly after 5 p.m. Too late. At 3:10 p.m., Elizabeth II dies peacefully in her bedroom at Balmoral. Princess Anne is with her. Charles is with her. The woman who spent 70 years as queen spends her final moments in the place she loved most. The palace waits to announce the news, allows family to arrive, allows time for private goodbyes. At 6:30 p.m., the announcement is made public. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. Prince Harry, traveling separately, lands at Aberdeen after Elizabeth has died. His phone was off during the flight. He learns of his grandmother's death through a BBC News alert. Elizabeth is the first British monarch to die in Scotland since James V in 1542 at Falkland Palace. Her body is placed in the castle's ballroom. Her children and grandchildren keep vigil in complete privacy. Later, She is moved to the Palace of Holyrood House in Edinburgh, then to St. Giles Cathedral, then to London for her state funeral on September 19th. She is laid to rest in St. George's Chapel at Windsor beside Philip, who died in April 2021. Why did Elizabeth choose to die at Balmoral? Princess Anne later reveals that Elizabeth worried it would cause logistical difficulties. The plans for a monarch's death operation London Bridge are simpler if the Queen dies in London. Dying in Scotland means a long car journey to Edinburgh, a lying in state at the Scottish capital, an RAF flight to London, complications. But Elizabeth's family urged her not to worry. I think there was a moment when she felt that it would be more difficult if she died at Balmoral, Anne says. But we told her it was okay. Elizabeth died where she wanted to die, in her beloved paradise, far from London's formality, surrounded by mountains, in a place built by grief and sustained by love. King Charles III, speaking in 2024, reflects, "My late mother especially treasured the time spent at Balmoral, and it was there, in the most beloved of places, where she chose to spend her final days." Balmoral becomes, officially, Charles's property. He inherits it as Elizabeth inherited it from her father. Private, personal, not part of the Crown estate. In 2024, for the first time since its completion in 1856, Charles opens Balmoral Castle to the public. Limited numbers. Guided tours through several rooms. Tickets sell out in 24 hours. The website crashes. The public wants to see inside, to understand, to walk where Elizabeth walked, to stand in rooms where grief lived for 160 years. So what is Balmoral, really? Not a castle, a fortress against time, not a retreat, a laboratory for how the powerful grieve. Stand at Balmoral today, and you see 53,680 acres of highland beauty, granite turrets, formal gardens, herds of highland cattle grazing, tourists walking cairn-marked trails, children playing. The estate functions. It works. But stand here and listen to the silences between the tour groups. This is where Victoria mourned for 40 years. This is where she found John Brown and lost him. This is where Albert's vision died with Albert. This is where Elizabeth spent her final summer, knowing it was her final summer. This is where Diana's sons learned their mother was gone. This is where William and Harry walked, trying to understand what cannot be understood. Balmoral is not haunted by ghosts. It is haunted by grief's permanence. Every cairn Victoria built is a monument to what cannot return. Albert, Brown, youth, hope, the illusion that love and granite can stop time. The castle costs approximately £4 million per year to maintain today. The estate requires 50 full-time staff and up to 100 part-time workers during peak season. Every window must be cleaned, every roof inspected, every heating system serviced, every acre managed. The castle's value is estimated at £160 million. But what is the value of grief? What is the value of a place where queens come to die? Britain's most powerful women chose this place. Not Buckingham Palace with its 775 rooms and global recognition. Not Windsor Castle with its 1,000-year history. Balmoral. Remote, private, hidden in hills where no one can see you break. The darkness of Balmoral is not in its construction. No workers died building it, at least none that records show. The darkness is not in scandal, though scandal lived here. The darkness is not even in death, though death comes here repeatedly. The darkness of Balmoral is in what it represents. It represents the lie that escape is possible, that enough money, enough land, enough distance from London's scrutiny can create a place where pain does not reach. Albert believed it. He built granite walls and planted forests and designed a paradise he died before he could truly enjoy. Victoria believed it. She retreated here for 40 years, surrounding herself with monuments to the dead, convinced that if she stayed in this place long enough, grief would become bearable. Elizabeth believed it. She returned here every summer, walking the same paths, riding the same trails, trying to recreate the happiness she felt as a young mother. But pain does not respect property lines. Death does not stop at granite walls. Balmoral offers privacy, not protection. It offers space, not healing. It offers beauty undeniable, breathtaking beauty, but beauty cannot resurrect the dead. And yet, people return. Generation after generation. The royal family still spends August to October here. Charles continues the tradition. William and his children visit. The cycle repeats. Because maybe that is the only dark truth that matters. Maybe Balmoral is not about healing. Maybe it is about continuity. About returning to the place where others grieved before you. About walking trails your grandmother walked, standing by rivers where your great-great-great-great-grandmother stood, knowing that one day your own children will stand here and remember you. Maybe Balmoral's purpose is not to stop grief, but to hold it, to contain it in 53,680 acres of highland wilderness, to let it exist without judgment, to say, yes, you are in pain. Yes, the dead are still dead. Yes, time has not stopped. But here, at least, you can breathe. The castle will outlive Charles. It will outlive William. It will outlive every human who walks its corridors. Granite endures. Stone survives. But people do not. And perhaps that is Balmoral's greatest darkness and greatest gift. It reminds us, again and again, that we are temporary. That power does not prevent loss. That all the money in the British Empire cannot buy one more day with someone you love. Victoria could commission statues of John Brown, but she could not bring him back. Elizabeth could die at Balmoral, but she could not stop dying. Charles can open the castle to tourists, but he cannot recreate the summers his mother loved. The house stands. The people pass through. Time continues. Balmoral Castle, Britain's most beautiful reminder that nothing lasts forever. Not love, not power, not even grief, but granite. Granite lasts, cold and patient and utterly indifferent to human pain. Stand at Balmoral on a clear autumn day, and you will see the mountains, the river, the castle glowing in afternoon light. You will see tourists smiling for photographs, children running through gardens, cars parking in neat rows. Stand here at dusk when the tours end and the gates close, and you will see something else. An empty house waiting for its next grief, waiting for the next powerful person who believes they can outrun death by running far enough north, waiting to prove, once again, that you cannot. Can a place built as an escape from death become death's most patient companion? Ask Victoria, still buried with John Brown's ring on her finger. Ask Elizabeth, who chose this place for her final breath. Ask the granite walls, which have heard more royal last words than any building in British history. They know the answer. The answer is yes.